And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. And my guest today is Aaron Keller. He is a founding partner and the managing principal of Capsule, which is a brand development strategy and research firm. He's the author of several books, the most recent being Physics of Brand, which was a really interesting book. I read that book. It was pretty cool. And Aaron, I would say, fits into the category of someone that's got a real viable business, an ad agency, and uses content and thought leadership to differentiate and attract clients and do all the things that people like to do with their content. So welcome aboard today, Aaron. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Peter. It's great to be here.
So give us a quick sense of the sort of content slash thought leadership things that you do. Books, writing. What does that side of your world look like?
Yes. Well, we've written actually three books. Two books on design, Design Matters Packaging and Design Matters Logos. Those are way back. And then more recently, the Physics brand, which you mentioned. I also write for blogs, variety of blogs. Lately, we come in as media and write for different conferences that are putting on speakers, and we come in as micro influencers, you might say, tweeting and socializing, and then also doing live blogging about the events. That's been a really good, productive thing for us. And
Cool.
of course, writing a column for the Twin Cities Business Magazine and a variety of other things.
Got it. So give me a sense of the investment that you make in sort of time and energy. How much time and energy do you spend on the content development, and what that return looks like for you? What's the benefit to you?
That's a good question. The typically for me, and we have other people that edit and write as well here. But for me, it's about maybe an hour or two a week that I'm investing time in that. Depends on the week and depending on how much content we have to produce. If it's a really busy week and there's a lot of stuff to write about, it gets more, but it probably averages out to 1 to 2 hours a week. And then the return on that, sometimes it's hard to measure that. I know that writing books is it's basically a gigantic doorstop, allows you to walk anywhere, and it's an incredibly valuable thing. I had one point in time when I was trying to decide whether or not it was worthwhile writing our second book, because it's a big effort and a big investment in time, and it's hard to measure the outcomes. And so I was chatting with someone else who had written a book, but previously to that had spent 20 years writing a monthly newsletter. Those things that people used to write. And he said his book, when he wrote his book, the value was equivalent to the time he put into 20 years of writing a monthly newsletter. So I figured it's probably worthwhile to write a second book. It seemed like a large enough, equivalency for me. And so it's hard to measure the return, but I know that from a reputation point of view, from referrals and connections that get made back to us, it definitely shows up. But I don't have a very specific number to give you.
Okay, so it sounds like on the one hand, you're not spending an inordinate amount of time. It's not a major distraction. I would imagine you enjoy it as well, right? So it's a couple hours a week, not a big deal. Not the easiest thing to measure in terms of looking back and saying, I acquired these five net new clients, and this led to Y revenue over X years or something like that. But I would imagine, intuitively and in the market, that it is to your advantage to do so. Could you talk to that in terms of, is it a tiebreaker? Is it when you put that thud on someone's desk, a prospect or someone that you're talking to, that hey, here's my book, thump, here it is. It credentializes you. Give me a sense of how your instincts are telling you that the return is there, if even if the P&L might not be able to show it so directly.
Yeah, I would say intuitively, where I've seen its most significant value has been in the form of lead generation or in opportunities showing up at our door, without us having to be out there pounding the pavement or doing cold calls or things like that. So things opportunities show up. We still have to deliver on the promises of what we are as a firm.
Right, of course.
Price has got to work out, and there's a lot of other factors that get involved. And so those things, it plays a role in the level of expertise. It gets us in. We're about a 15-person firm, and at that size, we're doing work with brands as large as Pepsi and Patagonia, as well as startups and really small companies. but we're able to work at a very high level, and that's definitely a big contributor of the book.
So let me touch on that because that's an interesting point. Because here you are, a 15-person firm in the Midwest, right? And if you've got these blue chip clients like a Pepsi, and there aren't many that are much bigger than that, tell me the connection or connect the dots for me. The connection between book credentializes you, enables you to sort of punch above your weight class, if you will, in terms of client acquisition at the highest levels.
The Pepsi opportunity, and I'll just be specific about that one because it's a really interesting one. It had a number of legs and reasons why it came to us. It started with being connected to the head of design at 3M. He went on to Pepsi and reviewed our third book. And it also came from having done a speech in Portland for a group as it related to our second book. And coming out of that speech, had a really good connection with someone there who was at 3M and also went to Pepsi. And then came to us when this opportunity came up as a perfect match for us. And so I can tie those two things back to two of the books specifically as reasons why they were in the world of Capsule essentially.
And I would imagine not a lot of your quote direct competitors in your local market in the Midwest speaking in Portland and at these type of events and having the book behind them, right? So it's a differentiator.
Yeah, it definitely helps, and it makes us at least differentiated, perhaps even distinct in how we are perceived in the marketplace. It also gives us the perception of being really valuable, which is nice.
Right. So if someone's sitting there now listening to this and they're in a similar situation, a professional services firm, consulting firm, another creative agency, etc., and they're sort of toying with this idea, right? Of yeah, maybe I want to sort of go down this path. What might you advise them to be thinking about and doing or not doing as it relates to this?
For me, it's I would say I would look at it as a book for sure if you can, if you've got the wherewithal, if you're driven enough to do it. It does require a significant amount of effort. It's 9 months of your life dedicated to writing it, but it definitely has a lot of value. If not, the other thing that I've seen done very well is blogging to a book, essentially blogging over a period of time, and then all that content turns into a book. It still takes a tremendous amount of effort, and I would even say maybe more effort than the just sitting down and hammering out a good sizable bit of a book. But it also is important to put out there a point of view. Having something out in the world and just having it be a sales tool and designed and written to be a sales tool, most people can see right through that, and it doesn't help much when people read it and go, "Well, that really wasn't that compelling," or there's no compelling thought to the contents of it. So it's got to be good. It's got to be worthy. It's going to end
Well,
up.
but you, I mean, you jump through that piece really quickly, right? Because I think that everybody's looking for the easy way. Everybody's looking for the shortcut, looking for the diet that allows you to eat candy and not have to exercise, right? But putting something out there from a content perspective, particularly a book, which is a lot of stuff in a book, it has to be good. It has to have a perspective and a point of view, and that isn't easy. So I would say you've done this 3 times. How do you write a good book?
Well, and I would say that our first two, the design books were practical. We're basically pulling from our existing base of knowledge, having done what we do. So they were easier in a sense. The third one, once get into that, it had two other authors, so it was three authors coming together, which made it more challenging. But the things that will inspire me, like the fact that it'll be in the Library of Congress, right? If you publish a book and it achieves something, it is going to be in the Library of Congress, which is a pretty interesting stature in life. So writing something that is fitting for the Library of Congress is some way in some sort to be compelling. And there are things out there to be written about. There was plenty of books on brand out there before we wrote the physics of brand, and it made us question whether or not we should write it. But then, as we talked about it, so this is a new perspective. This is a modern perspective on how brands are built. And all due respect to Acker and all that he has delivered to the world of brands, this was the next, I think, evolution of it to think about how brands live in our communities and what they do for society. So it was important to us.
And I think what I'm hearing you say is not to be afraid to have a perspective and a point of view and put it out there, right? If it's just going to be more noise or more of the same or regurgitation of seven other people's perspectives, so what? But you are adding, which is sort of to me the true definition of thought leadership. You're adding to the conversation by having a different take on brand, because you're clearly not the first person to be writing a book on branding, right? I could probably go to Amazon and find 500, but what was, sort of what is the different take that you have on it, and how did that sort of shape the thinking of the book?
As we looked at it, most of the stuff that was built around brands and the thinking that went with brands was built on the platform of advertising, and that advertising built brands. And nowadays, as you look at it through that lens, advertising is really there to prop up brands that are not doing as well, or that are meant to add to. Really good brands don't need advertising. I think the founder of the Geek Squad had this wonderful little phrase, which was, "Advertising is the tax you pay for not being interesting." Um, right? I mean,
It's true though, right?
it is. I mean, having a point of view, putting something out there, and being interesting is a better form of building a brand. It's going to have a stronger relationship with its customers, versus having to force it upon people through advertising. Now that said, there's all kinds of good things that advertising does to make people
Yep.
aware of brands that they wouldn't know,
Right.
solutions to problems that they didn't know existed. So it needs to exist, and it's a valuable thing. It's just there could be, as we looked at it, a new rewrite of that perspective, and that's what the physics of brand became. And we essentially connected customer experience design, or the what the customer experience is, with brand value, which hadn't been done before. And I can't tell you that, like, when we first started thinking about the book, that's exactly what thought we were going to do. It actually was late in the book process that we realized what we had done, and it was mainly because we had interest in both parties, both areas. If you know the history of customer experience, or the experience economy, and Joe Pine's work,
Yep.
and then
Yep.
Acker's work in the world of brand and brand strategy, we brought those two worlds together and collided them, and showed mathematically and metaphorically why they should be closer together. And
So being that the collider, if that's a word, right? Sometimes that's really the spark of great ideas, right? Because Joe Pine's work is fabulous, right, on the customer experience side. There's lots of pieces on branding, Acker you mentioned, et cetera, and sort of combining some of those, but adding to the conversation is different. Let me pivot this a little bit and move to, okay. So now you're an author, multiple time author. You've got your book, you've got your content, you're out there. What are the things that you have been and continue to do to get the book, the message out there? You mentioned speaking before, but what are the other doors that now open to you as a published author that has a book out into the marketplace? And how does that again, from your perspective, how does that benefit your business?
yeah, the doors that it's hard to tell because you don't know which ones would have opened if you didn't have the book.
Right.
Um,
Hard to do an A/B test, right?
Right, right. It is. It is. I don't know any other lens than the ones I'm looking through right now. So it's an interesting thing to consider. But I look at, like, the packaging book. I know there was a direct connection between that and being able to work with Patagonia, and taking a thought leadership perspective within the packaging book. I know that the kinds of speaking gigs, the kind of places we get invited to, the kind of people we get to be in front of. But are those revenue generating? Not always. Sometimes they're just extra credibility and extra cachet, which adds in some form. But yeah, it's hard to say that there's any particular door. Being able to be a columnist is cool to me. I don't know if it would be to everybody else, but for me, I was rather jazzed to be a business columnist as my another thing to do. And so that's a door that definitely opened because of the book and all the stuff that came out of it.
How much, but how important is it that, from an intrinsic perspective, that you actually enjoy it? I mean, I said before, my assumption is that you enjoy the writing and being a columnist and an author, but talk to that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Being an entrepreneur it's important that you enjoy it because it has hard roads. It has there's lumpy spots all over the place, or rocky roads, or whatever metaphor you want to use. You have to enjoy that. And the writing thing, yeah, if that's the thing you choose to do, versus doing a podcast like this, whatever it is, you definitely better be enjoying it. Not just because you need to move forward and continue to do it and be motivated to do it, but I think that people can tell. I think that people can hear it in the tone and voice of what you either write or speak in. You can it shows up, right, and it shows up in your energy and your passion for it. So I think it's critical that you really enjoy doing that. Otherwise, it's hard to do something you don't enjoy for a very long time. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
and it often
Exactly.
requires a very long time to get to a level of expertise on a particular subject area. So yeah, you do have to definitely enjoy what you're doing. And the writing thing, sometimes it pours out of me. It's really easy, and other times it's a struggle. But I enjoy the struggle sometimes as much as I do enjoy the things that just kind of happen when it comes to writing.
Well, and I would say that enjoyment is key, particularly when it's voluntary, right? And it's outside of the core. It's not like it's a subset of the work that you do professionally. And you say, oh, this part of a project, it's not the project management side I don't like, but I have to suck it up because you got to sort of deal with that. You've chosen to do this. So you can, if you hated it, you can say, the hell am I doing this for? Right?
Yeah,
Like, I'm going to choose not to do it. So that's cool. As we start to wind down here today, any pearls of wisdom or advice to folks that are going down the path in terms of some lessons from you that you've learned along the way? Because you've been at this a while in terms of the content and the thought leadership.
yeah, yeah. I would, find a path that's really interesting to you that you can be very passionate about. Find the things that you're always curious and because there's content where you're curious. It's there all the I'm reminded of a wonderful story that I haven't been able to tell yet as it relates to the Sears bankruptcy, but there's an old story about Sears and the Sears catalog that I'll hand to you now. It's a really fascinating one in the world of design. And that the Montgomery Ward catalog was actually around first before the Sears catalog, but the Sears is the most noted, the most visible, and the most right. It's the one that everybody talks about. No one really talks about the Montgomery Ward catalog. It was around earlier and it stayed longer. Well, one of the reasons why I believe, and other design people or design minds believe this, is the Montgomery Ward catalog versus the Sears catalog. If you put it on a coffee table, the Sears catalog was actually smaller in footprint. And we stack books large to small. So every time someone sat down at a
Huh.
coffee table, the Sears catalog was on top.
Oh,
No one is
that's I
necessarily.
was now. Was that by design, or we don't know?
It's a curious next question. There's no specific history as noted that says yes, we intentionally made this smaller than the Montgomery Ward catalog for that reason, or we did it because we wanted to save on paper. But it was done. I like to believe it was an intentional move because it's almost like doing at the front of the phone book being the AAA contract
Right, right, right,
on the
right.
phone, but in the
Every plumbing company used to have five A's in front of it.
right, right, which was kind of
Right.
an obnoxious thing in the world of marketing because it's
Yeah. Yeah.
shallow. But yet, this is done in a really elegant way, right? It's the catalog you see when you sit down at a coffee table, and it's always visible. It's right there in front of you. That kind of stuff. That's curious to me. That's the design
Yeah.
world, and
And
I'm
that falls right into your sweet spot on the physics of brand winning.
yes,
Anyway, this has been great, Aaron. I appreciate your time and sharing the journey and lots of great information here for people going down a similar path. And thank you for joining us today.
thank you, Peter. This has been great.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.